was. This happens like so often. Okay, that was only one document. I need you to get the whole folder that I'm showing you. So the whole, check it again and let me know that you got, all of it.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. There we go. Now I have the whole thing, right?
The whole folder, right. So what you want to do is just save it in your browser. That way you can, get to it later and to review and to do some of the activities or tasks that I suggest you do when you're studying. So let me show you the standards document. Remember, we were talking about domains. Now, the test is built in domains. This is the document that the test maker receives from the state. Every content area and the PPR has a document assigned to their standards. And these are for all teachers, myself, you guys, these are our pedagogy, which is the science of teaching, and professional responsibility standards, EC, early child through, grade 12. This is the document that TEA sends to the test maker. The test maker uses this document to rearrange the standards into domains, right? So let me see what happened. So standard 1, let me see where my annotating stuff is. Standard 1 is domain 1. Domain 1 is only about standard 1. And it's worth 34%. So how important is it for you to understand standard 1? Super, right? So domain 2 on the exam is only standard 2. Domain 2 is standard 2. And I want to say it's like 16%. I'm not sure. We'll go back and look at it, but it's something like that in the teens. Algo así. Okay, now we get to domain 3, right? Domain 3 is not just standard 3. It is not just standard 3. Domain 3 is standard 1, 3, which is the one that we're typing under, and technology apps 1 through 7. I bet I'll make this big. Domain 4 is standard 4. And I forgot to tell you, domain 3 is 33% of the exam. So standard 1 comes out in 2 different domains. This standard here, it comes out in all of this, 34%. And it's also in domain 3, their standard 1, which is worth 33%. So having a very, very solid understanding of standard 1, which is the teacher designing instruction, that's you creating, composing, planning instruction appropriate for all the students, EC through 12, EL, special ed, socioeconomic disadvantage, divorced student, homeless student, whatever they tell you in the scenario, appropriate for all of them, that reflects your understanding of the content. But what's more important is that it's based on continuous and appropriate assessment. Assessments, our assessments drive instruction. I'm going to write that down. They drive instruction because as we gather the data, as we walk around doing formative assessments, which could be as informal as just listening to the group speak to each other, we're collecting data. Do they understand? Is learning successful? Are they getting those objectives? If not, then I need to drive my plan to do a reteach because my students are not there. So we give assessments to drive our instructions. What do they know? And how can I help them know things better? And we give continuous, that means you might give 3 sort of, and I say assessments, but really an assessment could just be you having a conversation with the student over the content matter. And within that conversation, you understand, oh my God, they really don't know what multiplication is. They think it's addition, and so I need to reteach it. Assessments are what give us the data to know what the students know. And if we have a learning objective that we have written, like the students will be able to identify oxymorons in a text. And if they can't do that at the end of class, then I know that tomorrow I have to either find better examples of oxymorons, revisit that teach of that academic vocabulary, but assessments drive instruction. It is like, it is like a cycle where you have instruction here, and then we watch, we assess, and then we decide that maybe reteach or we can move on. And that's what drives the instruction again. And it continues. We instruct, we assess, check, we make changes, again, check. So on and so forth. Sorry for my ridiculously disgusting drawing. Now, artistry is definitely not my strength. So understanding standard 1, so crucial to your success, not just on this exam, but in the classroom. So we're going to take a look at it. We did it yesterday. I'm sorry for those of you that are just, that are coming in. Well, we're waiting for Ms. Beasley. She's just getting here now. Just popped in. I'm going to admit her. And I'm just going to review some things for Mr. Bettis because this is his first time in the class. And we went over this yesterday, Mr. Bettis. So today we're just sort of going over practice questions.
I'm gonna mute myself, Ms. G.
Absolutely. I'm just sort of doing a quick review for those that have just come in for today for the first time. So again, let me see. If you can go ahead and mute yourself, that would be fantastic. Or I'll mute you. I got you. I muted you already. Okay. So the way that we read these, Mr. Bettis, on the left-hand side, you have the teacher knowledge. Those are the facts, the theories, the strategies, all of your knowledge base that you have to know before you get into the classroom. And it's all concerning your design of instruction that's appropriate for all students. And they'll tell you in the scenario what students are talking about. So pay attention. Sorry, that's too much. Clear that and let's try it again. Design instruction for all students. You have an understanding of the relevant content for sure, but that is based on continuous and appropriate assessment. So important that we're checking for understanding, and doing assessments. Now, on this side, you have the teacher knowledge. These are all of the things you have to know. And they're labeled with a K. It's all the way down. So for instance, here, 1.1K, you have intellectual, social, physical, emotional, developmental characteristics of students in different age groups. So EC through 12, all of these different theories. The cognitive is intellectual. That's Piaget. What does Piaget tell us about the way that the brain works and the way that it develops? What does, I don't know if it's Erickson, tell us about social development, emotional development, physical development? What do we know about the development of the students that we have, whether in the scenario or in our classroom? And it's not just important for you to know it because they're never going to ask you what's Piaget's, theory of development. They're going to give you a scenario with a group of students in a particular age group, and you will have to apply your knowledge to make sure that student success and learning takes place. And so the correct answer to every question on that PPR exam is going to come from this right-hand column. On this right-hand column, all of the S things, and I'm not saying they're going to quiz you on all of them, but the correct answer will be the teacher doing something on the right-hand column. You creating lesson plans that reflect understanding of the student's developmental characteristics and needs. A good example of that would be the question on the manual that asks you about Miss Salceda's first grade class that is learning about the plant life cycle. Based on the development of her students, which would be the most appropriate activity for the students to understand the life cycle of plants? Now, in that answer choice, it said, go walk around and go look at plants and draw pictures. B, plant a seed and watch the seed grow and take notes over the course of weeks. C, go to a botanical gardens and observe the plants. Or D, watch videos. We know that students in the first grade, cognitively, their brains, their intellectual capacity, they work better by doing and learning things concretely. That means hands-on. That means experiments. That means they are doing and seeing things as they happen. That example is an example of the teacher planning. If she planned for the kids to plant a seed and then watch it grow and take notes on that, that is the best course of action. Because what we know about child development tells us that age group, first grade, which they told us, they understand developmentally better if they are seeing things happen the way that they happen, so they can understand it. Now, when they get to senior level, we can talk about things, describe them, sort of processes, and the students can understand in their minds a parallel, very similar image that we were trying to convey to them. Because those students that are older cognitively can think abstractly. They have more of that experimental concrete knowledge that they experience through all of their lives. And then when they've learned to piece together, to synthesize an idea of what we're talking about abstractly without seeing it. Early children cannot do that. It is why it's difficult for younger kids to understand death before it's happened in their life. What do you mean someone goes somewhere and I don't know where they are anymore? Like, you can't talk to them unless it has happened. It's very difficult to think about things, but it's because of where their brain is developmentally. So the way to study using this document is to make sure that you know all the key terms and phrases that are on this side, and you can find those in the documents that I have for you in the folder. Understanding what comes here is very important, but being able to visualize what it would look like for a teacher to plan instruction that motivates students to want to learn and achieve. What would that look like? Now, I can tell you because I know what motivates theoretically and otherwise, but you need to know that. That way you'll be able to choose the best choice. And I'll give you a hint. Using the students' background, skills, interests as a means to motivate the students is always going to work. Utilizing who they are to help them learn. For instance, if I am giving a research project and I want them just to learn how to research, to utilize Google, to find credible sources, in order to get them, because research isn't fun, all that stuff isn't fun, but we gotta do it. Now, I know the best way to get them to do the research would be to give them free range on the choice of topic. Like, they get to choose it. Why might they? And I would like for someone to unmute themselves. Tell me why giving them choice would allow me to know that that means they're going to put effort into it. They're going to be motivated to do the things I need them to do in this lesson cycle, having to do with research, because they chose their topic. Let's say my 13-year-old super into skateboard. So maybe he wants to do like the history of skateboarding. How do I know that Noah is going to finish his project and do all the different things having to do about skateboarding? How do I know I'm going to get a buy-in more than if I just assigned him something like seashells? If I assigned him a research project on seashells. Somebody unmute themselves.
Because since they like it and they enjoy it, they'll probably put more effort into it.
Yes, they have the buy-in. They already did one thing, which is choose that. The buy-in is there. That interest is there. When you allow the students to utilize things that they're interested in, things that they're familiar with, things that they're good at, even skills that they are good at. What if I told my students, okay, guys, go find your research things. I want you to find 3 articles having to do with your research thing. And then you get to decide whether you're going to summarize for me orally what that research article is about, write a paragraph about what that research article is about, or do a media bit with visuals and audio. So what might the teacher be doing with giving them options for this activity? What might she be doing? What is this word right here? I'm going to underline it in something, a different color. Where are the colors? Okay. What is that?
Skills.
Right. So if I told them to find 3 research articles, to read them and to know what they're about, why couldn't I give students the option of telling me orally in a summary, or doing something digitally, or giving them the option by some kids are really good with like technology stuff and they do amazing things. And FYI, technology is harder because they have to sort of marry print, audio, and visual together. But giving them a choice allows them to use strengths that they have, skills that they have, to show you their learning success. I can get whether they understood the articles from them telling me about it, or from a paragraph, or from that their technology thing, or maybe they even have to do a collage over it. Giving them options gives them power. It gives them interest. When you choose something, there's a buy-in. I made that choice. I invested into it. Another example would be my ex-stepdaughter. During the pandemic, she was in the 5th grade and she was really struggling with word problems. And so, she never even met her teacher in person. Oh no, that's not true. She did. She met her for a little bit and then spring break. But in any event, it was hard for her. And like all the other teachers didn't really know what they were doing. So they just kind of gave them the stuff and let them do it on their own. I knew that she was obsessed with cats. So I turned all of her, multiplication, division questions into having to do things with cats. Like silly things having to do with cats. And guess what? She was able to do it. I don't know why having to be about cars or Maria and her apples or blah, blah, blah makes it more difficult. But for some reason, when I just changed the stuff to be something she was interested in, it's sort of like she was more invested to find out, like, let's see how many cats we have left over after this. Like, she wanted to know. And there was that buy-in. Knowing your students. And that's why the very first thing in all of our standards that is most important for us is students. And this section is all about students. all about students, you understanding students, you understanding their backgrounds, their skills, their interests, their learning needs, and the needs of ELL learners, but not just knowing it, utilizing and planning for activities, exercises that would help them be successful in your lesson based on who you have in the classroom. Using effective approaches to help with students' learning needs and their preferences. Preferences are the way that you like to learn. Needs are your weakness. Like, what do you need? Oh, you need to have things, written down so that you can see it. You need a hard copy of things. That's the way you learn. So I'm going to make sure that even though my directions are on the overhead or on the projector, on the screen, I'm going to hand out pieces of paper. Maybe I just hand it out to the people who wanted it or who need it. But that your students, half of the battle for us and for any teacher is taking the time to understand the little humans you are trying to change, because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to change their brains. You're trying to implant or help them grow their brains, and the brains, grow, and they get more experience in learning through those neural pathways. Well, we know that if you don't take an active interest, take the time to learn not only who your students are, but what they're good at, what they're not good at, what they need, what they like, what they desire, then you're going to be less successful than you could have been. Because if a student knows you know them, you're invested in them. Oh, she took the time to rewrite all my math questions having to do with cats. I'm going to pay attention to this. This is kind of interesting. Never had anyone do that for me before, which is literally what my stepdaughter said. Because after we finished the math, which was in no time, it was like 10 questions. She was like, wow, no one's ever done that. Like, just make it easier for me. All I did was take something she liked, sat there for like 10 minutes and rewrote math questions to include cats. That's it. That's all. And she was able to do it. Where before she sat there just looking at it and the pencil. I don't know if it's a block or what, but can remove blocks for our students. Why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we just do a little extra work to add in things that they like, so that when that math question comes up and we're doing it as a class, or whatever the case may be, we have people's invested intrinsic motivation to pay attention. Oh, she's talking about skateboarding or cats, or she's doing like her vocabulary and talking about Haiti. Hey, I'm from Haiti. That's kind of cool. Miss, I'm from Haiti. I know you are. Tell us about it. Using who they are whenever possible to make learning experiences. So very important. I mean, if you take the time to learn your students, and in standard 2, I'm going to erase all this stuff right now. I'm just kind of jump. Standard 2, remember, we're talking about standard 1, which is a very important standard. Standard 2 is all about you creating a classroom environment of respect, rapport that fosters a positive climate for learning, equity, which means everybody has the same opportunities to be successful. Well, if someone's better than speaking than writing and they understand it, we're still going to work on the writing. I'm not getting you out of a writing grade. But if we read this thing and you understood it, why wouldn't I allow you to explain it to me? I know we have to work on writing, but if I'm looking and measuring whether you understood something, give them different ways to show you. By learning who your students are, you help create that positive climate for learning. I'll tell you a true story. I taught for 16 years in the classroom. And every single year, by the second day, no matter if I had, 96 students, like when I taught at the junior high, or if I had 130 something or 140, 160 at the high school, I knew everybody's first name by the second day of school. Everyone's. Every person that they came in the next day, I'm like, hey, Mousy Marissa, Scandalous Sasha, because we did an activity and I made it. So from the first day one, I'm like, I want to know your name and something about you. So you're going to take this thesaurus and you're going to go, if your name starts with Stephanie, you're going to go to the S's and you're going to look for an S word that describes you, a synonym for who you are. Synonym means same. So mine was, scholarly, Salceda, sassy, Salceda, to describe me. And then we would play a game, and it's like a snake game. It's fun and whatnot. I spent a lot of time in the beginning, to the point where I've gotten in trouble over it, building a community of learners, a classroom community where the students felt like they were part of a team and that everybody was super important and that we were all players on a team in order to be successful. Because I can't be successful as a teacher if half of my students are not successful. That would be preposterous. Like, how am I a successful teacher? I have to try, and it is my job to help them be successful. But to realize when they are struggling and what it might be for. If you have a student that's always done really well and all of a sudden they're not doing well, what might you think? If you have a student that was an A student for first 6 weeks, second 6 weeks, third 6 weeks, when they get back from Christmas break, their grades go down. They stop turning in homework. What would you think? And what do you do? Anyone?
I didn't hear the question, but I'm letting you know I'm driving home again. So
No worries.
I'll let you know when I switch over. So I'm gonna go back to mute.
Sure.
Can you repeat the question, Ms. Alceda, please?
Sure. If you have a student who was an A student, I'm saying Miss Alceda's concerned about her 8th grade student, Matthew. He consistently scored in the 90s, first marking period, second marking period, third marking period. After winter break, his grades fell drastically and he stopped turning in homework. What course of action should Miss Salceda take with Matthew? What should she do? What does she know about her student and what should she do next?
I will have a one-on-one with him, like before class or after class.
Absolutely.
See
And what is your goal with the one-on-one? To see what's going on. Because we have to remember, our students are not robots. They cannot just produce for all of their teachers if stuff is not going well in their life. If their dad or mom died of coronavirus, nobody's going to be turning in homework. You know what I mean? It's going to be difficult. And so you have to find ways to support. And you have to know your students in order to know what's normal for them, what's not normal for them. Have conversations where you are invested in their success, in each and every one of their success, not just the ones where it's easy for you, especially the ones where it's hard for you. In fact, you should measure your success on the students that are hard, the ones that are homeless, the ones that comes from foster, the ones that are in gangs. And it is not impossible to reach them. If they are troubled behaviorally, if it's not a disability, a manifestation of a documented disability, I will bet all of my money that something terrible is going on in their lives and they feel helpless and don't know how to deal with those emotions. So they, you have to explode. Think about adults that explode when things are terrible in their lives. These are children who don't know yet how to regulate emotion. So whenever I have misbehavior in my classroom, and I know it's not a manifestation of a disability, automatically I'm not like angry for the outburst. I go to concerned, because I have never, and I have had hundreds, thousands of students, never met a student that wanted to disappoint me, that was okay with me being disappointed. They didn't. If they had a meltdown, it was because something really terrible was going on in their lives and their little brains couldn't handle it. It was overload. And so it's our job to make sure that we are aware and that we remember that they're little humans who are on a timeline of natural growth and development, but that things impede that and can stop it, whether it's disability, whether it's stress related or whatever the case may be, and to be there to support them in whatever it is. Make the classroom a place where students, for instance, look at S.2.1s, and this is in standard 2. So the application of it, what can you do? Interact with students in ways that reflect support and show respect for all students. Reflect support and show respect for all students. So the question that I just gave you. So if a student, Matthew, has done so well for 6 weeks, and then all of a sudden he comes back, I'm gonna automatically think something must have happened over break for him to be, being so different. And instead of going and being like, you're not doing your homework, this is your grade, I'm gonna say, hey, Matthew, what's going on? It's what's up? You are so right, and you always do your homework. I'm concerned that maybe something's going on, or you're stressed. Like, what's happening? I would interact with them to show respect for my students, not automatically going at them, knowing this student and respecting them and coming to them, not accusatory, but like questioning, do you need support? Because I value you, and this is not what I have come to know of your abilities. That shows respect, as opposed to, you didn't do your homework, have your parents sign that homework and send it back. You just say that without even questioning, because you're annoyed that your top student is not doing bad. He's going to lose respect for you, not going to learn. You've added to the problem, you didn't investigate, and also you didn't solve the problem, because that student is not going to automatically start doing better because you made them feel bad. No, they will only do better if you support them, come to them with respect and say, how can I help you? I know you're struggling right now, and I don't want to see that. So what can I do to help you? That is an example. And that will tell the student, my teacher cares about me. And what I want for everyone to remember is that students, EC through 12, they're with teachers from, depending on when they start, going at 7:30 to 4:30 in the afternoon, give or take an hour if you're elementary, middle school, or high school. So for 12 years of their life, 13 years of their life, they see their teachers every day, 187 days, however many hours, 8 hours a week. That's a lot. That means that we have a big impact, whether we realize it or not, whether the teacher's trying to make a good impact or not, they're having an impact. If you go in there and you do it willy-nilly and you don't care about your students, they are going to know that. You don't have to tell them, oh, I'm just here for a paycheck. I've had high school students, junior high students. You know how students, they like to, talk about their other teachers, which I don't particularly like. However, I do listen. And they know, oh, this teacher doesn't like me, or this teacher doesn't care. I didn't even do my homework. I just turned something else in and blah, blah, blah. And they didn't even grade it, but I got it back. So they know and can tell without us even talking via our nonverbals. Does this adult, which I spend so much time with, who is supposed to be on my side, helping me succeed, do they like me? And what we know about cognitive theory in the brain, neurobiology tells us, neuroscience tells us that students, people, humans don't learn that well if they're not comfortable. Like, if I know my teacher hates me, I'm not going to participate in class. I'm going to put my neck on the line to try to risk, and learning takes risk. Because you don't know everything, you're going to get it wrong. Mistakes are fine. They're not a problem. Not trying is not a problem. I mean, is a problem. Not trying is not a problem. And so teachers can sort of create an atmosphere where students don't want to try based on your classroom climate. Are you upset if somebody gets something wrong and say, oh my God, how many times have we gone over this? I'm not going to want to give you my answer if you just said that because somebody got it wrong. Hey, this is school. We're not supposed to get it perfect. We're all supposed to be learning. If somebody doesn't know it, that's okay. Guess what? Someone in here does. And then we're going to talk about it. So domain 2 and standard 2 are about you being careful, conscious, calculated with the type of climate or atmosphere that you create for your students, because it is very important. If a student, oh my God, I've had over and over again, and I honestly didn't like the way that it looked sometimes, but I'd have students come in, they didn't have them till 7th period, and they're there in 2nd period because they have a classroom nearby. Hey, Miss Elsteva, oh, I don't want to go to this class, blah, blah. And the bell has rung it. I'm like, you don't have me until 7th period. You need to get to class right away. But students wanted to come, even though we did stuff that wasn't always fun. Grammar, iambic pentameter, all sorts of analysis that, could be arduous and difficult. They still wanted to be there. Why? Because they knew I cared about them. And regardless of what we were going to do, how hard, blah, 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 we were going to get it done, and I was going to be there to support them. That's the kind of classroom that you want to create, where kids want to come, even though you're going to toil in the work, because they know you like them as a human being, as a person, not just as a student, not just as a number, like who you are. I like Lillian Beasley, and I want for her to succeed. I'm invested in it as she is. And the kids resonate with that, especially because not everybody has that at home. In fact, the majority, unfortunately, and I'm not saying this because of, parents not doing their job and they're not neglecting, there's a whole swath of the population that is called the working poor, a horrible oxymoron that should never exist in this reality of the United States, but it is. And as a result of that, parents have to spend, the majority of their time away from their kids. So they're not there to say, great job. I love how you continued, even though that was hard. I saw you got that wrong the first time and then you figured it out. That was awesome. They don't have somebody to say that. And is that important in growth and development? Do we know that that is important? Affirmations, positive affirmations, someone to feel safe and loved and admired and seen, it's important. Not all of the students have it at home. So it is literally our job, and I've argued with teachers who say, it's not my job to be a parent. Excuse me, it is your job to foster a climate, an atmosphere, an experience where the students feel validated, equal, respected, important, seen, and heard. It is our job. So although not every student may have a parent that is paying attention to all of those things and being sensitive, they will have a teacher because we are getting paid to do it. Whoever we have on our roster, it is our job to know them, understand them, understand their interests. And I'm going to ask, for 5 extra credit points, how can we find out what our students are interested in? How does one get to know that information? What might we do? What tool? Somebody unmute yourself. Tell me, what tool can I use to find out interest?
You can add, like what we do, we tell them, do anybody have anything good to say? Tell me something good this week. What did you do? What did you like during the weekend? So you get them to talk about themselves. So you will be able to, they're having a bad day. You be like, oh, you didn't play your new Nintendo yesterday? So that's how we do that.
Excellent. Some teachers, they'll do it at the beginning of the year whenever they're, setting up their stuff, or like while they're trying to do the papers, they give out things for the kids to fill out. Their schedule, their parents' information. Some teachers give out an interest survey, like, what's your favorite kind of music, or who's your favorite band?
All
What's your
about me.
favorite book?
Yeah.
All about me type things. And so I'll tell you, I started teaching in 2003, and my first year teaching, I used the interest survey. My second year teaching, I used the interest survey. And then I stopped because I found sort of a better way for me to learn about them that was more fun, and I liked it better than just the interest survey. And that was that's the first project I've told you guys about, that when I, meet my kids, we do a setting up of our interactive notebooks, which I call DJs, because I call them dialectical journals. They write in it, and I'll write stuff back too to them. So they have 2 composition notebooks, which they tape together in the center, once for reading and writing. And then there's a project, a scavenger hunt of interest things, right? That they have to collect images, magazine cutouts, other things, drawings if they want, quotes, that they have to use to sort of collage decorate their interactive notebooks or DJs. And then we have a short presentation and tell me all about it. And I look at it, and there's a rubric, so they have to find, like, a picture of their family, or of something like that, of their siblings, who they admire, a quote, a family quote or a saying that means something to them, some like 3 things that they're interested in them, 3 things that they dislike or loathe, and there's several different things on them that they put on there. And I get to know who they are better, and we're putting this together, and I'm getting to know them, and it's this great activity, and then we utilize it for the rest of the year. So knowing who they are, where they come from, even what their fears are, that's important, really understanding them. And I think that is something that is sorely missed. And I think it's as a result of sort of like issues that we've sort of seen play out in school, that people don't want to get too close to their students, but you have to get close enough to them that that the little human beings, like where you would know them as good as your niece and nephew, like that, which is saying something, and you see them every day, you talk to them every day. So, and you should be talking to them every day, not just in a direct instruction capacity, but just in mini conversations to increase their oral language proficiency. So, Miss Beasley, are you at the house yet?
Unfortunately not. I live almost 45 minutes from my bar.
Okay, no worries.
Okay, sorry.
Yep.
I'm trying to get there fast though.
No. You do not rush. You take your time. Okay. Why is this not working? Come on now. Okay, guys, hold on. I don't know what is happening. Okay, there. It opened it somewhere else, I guess. Okay, so remember I was telling you in standard 1, there's all these theories. You have to know all those, cognitive theory, physical, psychosocial, moral, they're listed here. This is a really, really great cheat sheet of the different important concepts in the different domains. So you have standard 1, domain 1 in the front, and the different learning styles, student motivation, you have diversity. Technology is such a small section because this was created so like long ago. And then it was, like I said, it was taken out of print because TEA actually stopped Dynanotes from printing it because it was so useful. It was a useful tool to help people to study. It sort of like diluted everything just to the things that you needed. So it's still a useful study guide. And even though some of the things are out of date and they don't really like, this is a little bit, look how small this technology area it is. It says technology teachers effectively model and use technology to communicate, instruct, and maintain records. They must obey privacy, acceptable use, and copyright laws. Technology addresses learning styles and enhances lessons. So it does address learning styles by being able to bring in audio, visual, right? Computer programs, we have spreadsheets, word processing, online tools, audio, visual, videotapes. We don't have overhead projectors, you guys. We have, what is it called? Just projectors, I guess. Graphing calculators. But let's take a look at the actual, what's now the technology section. And remember, the technology section is located in domain 3. I'll just bring this up really quickly before I go to technology. See, domain 3 has standard 1, standard 3, and technology applications 1 through 7. So that's a big difference from that little paragraph just telling you to use it for your lessons and to take notes with it. But when I first started teaching, we didn't have computers like this. Like, we had computers. I had a computer in my classroom and it had a word processor on it, but it didn't have internet. I didn't take attendance on it. I took attendance on like bubble sheets that we turned in. I did my grades in these sheets that they gave us, and we bubbled them in, and I had a grade book, which was very annoying if somebody came in after the beginning of the year, because then I'd have to add their name, and if they let a line through it. So we did everything by paper. Now it's so different, and there's so much more technology that we need to know. As a result of it, the state added those 7 standards from the technology applications content area. So this is the technology applications EC through 6. That is a content area, and computer science is a different content area. But your domain 3 includes standards 1 through 7. And they're not going to ask you super detailed questions, right? Because this is only 33% of the exam, and it's in a domain that also covers standard 1 and 3. Standard 3 is implementation of your lesson plan. So it's not going to give you so many of these, but it's still important that you, at the very least, look through them. Look through them to make sure that you have at least a basic understanding of these standards. I would just at the very least read through them. They might ask you something about hardware, maybe something about the district intranet, and they'll use those things. So you read it the same way you read the PPR. Like I said, each one of our content areas, whether you teach math, science, social studies, art, trade, has this type of document, a standards document, and they're all read the same way. These are the things we need to be able to know, that we need to know before we get into the classroom. And this is what we need to be able to do. You need to be able to design, create interdisciplinary media presentations that include audio, video, text, and graphics. Interdisciplinary media, that means that across different disciplines. Like, if I'm doing a lesson over the Holocaust, I might create a PowerPoint, and it would have history in it. It might have some English in it. It might even have some math when I talk about like the numbers of people that perished and whatnot, like statistics. So it would be interdisciplinary over multiple disciplines. And we want to do that as much as possible. Layer the learning with bringing as many different disciplines so that they can start creating connections between what they're learning. So it's not all in a vacuum. Mr. Perez, for ELL instruction, the document that I would like for you to do a close reading of is this one here. Excellent, excellent tool that the state put out a while ago. And this one mostly focuses on beginner and intermediates because beginners and intermediates require so much support. Because it requires so much support, it makes it easy for the test maker to use them in scenarios where you would have to make an adjustment based on the fact that they're either a beginner or an intermediate, so that you can help them in whatever it is that they said. Now, they'll tell you, Miss Salceda has a classroom with several ELL beginner and intermediate students. So they will tell you what type of ELL they are, what type. And you have to know, okay, this is what beginners can do. And so this is how I can help them. Because some of the answer choices you'll be given will be doing things that are above what a beginner can do or above what an intermediate can do. So you need to be able to say, this is what they're able to do, and this is how I can help them move to the next level. And this is the document that helps so much. I just feel like it was really well written. And if I were taking this exam for the first time and I didn't have a very solid idea of, ELL instruction, this is what I would read. ELL learners come to the classroom with a wide range of educational backgrounds and varying levels of English language proficiency. While some ELLs may have the academic and linguistic ability which enables them to participate in social or academic interactions, other ELLs may need support in understanding and making connections with that grade level content. Remember that our ELLs have a huge job. Their job is to not only learn grade level content, which is math, science, social studies, and whatever electives they're taking, but also simultaneously at the same time learn a whole new language. And English isn't super easy. We have nonsensical rules for no reason in our language. You teach the students how to sound things out, but guess what? There's lots of words where those sound out rules don't work, and you have to remember that this is the way that it sounds. So it's challenging, which is why we have to make sure we're supporting our ELLs in the ways that we know work. And those ways are all written down here for us in this document.
Miss Salceda,
Yes.
I was going over that domain on 240 touring, and it was a little, it was a little complex to understand the ELL because they all have different levels, and as each grade, and they all have different grade levels, right? And then
Right.
the intermediate and all that, it was complex. So what do you recommend for me to do to kind of have to learn like each different level there, Miss? Because it was tough. Porque, for example, for I don't know, kindergarten, from kinder all the way to third grade, the intermediate, like and que era el otro, intermediate and advanced and all that, they were totally different from 4th to 5th grade, for example. So what do you recommend me there to study?
Well, I recommend this. So we know that, and here's the descriptors here. And they tell you, like, it doesn't go by grade level. Like, so you can be a kindergartner and you could be a beginner, and you would behave the same way. When a kindergartner beginner comes to the class, they don't have even the social language, which we the like technical term is called BICS, basic interpersonal communication skills. Those are the communication skills to say, excuse me, because I just burped, or I need to go to the restroom, my stomach hurts, I don't understand this question. all beginners, whether they are juniors or kindergartners, don't have that language. They don't have that language, the listening skills to hear what you're saying, or the speech skills to ask for clarification. What moves them from beginner to intermediate to advanced high is not grade level. It is their ability to speak and to listen and to understand. So once you understand that beginners speak, all beginners, whether they're in 3rd grade or in 12th grade, we assign them as beginners based on how much they can understand from listening. So I can talk to them, and if they look at me and stay quiet and just blink, I can guess based on that they're beginners, because they struggle to understand simple conversations. So anybody K through 12, difficulty understanding simple conversations in English, they're going to be that first descriptor. And you look at them, Mr. Perez, holistically. That means that you don't just take it like, oh, that one descriptor. You look at it holistically. Well, okay, they understand simple or routine directions, but they struggle to identify and distinguish individual words. So maybe they're not yet at beginner. So as they reflect these descriptors, as they're able to do these things listed, that's how they get moved up. They get moved up through each one. So this one is for listening. And ELLs are sort of assessed on their listening skills, speaking skills, reading skills, and writing skills. Listening and reading skills are receptive, where they're receiving a message. Speaking and writing is where they're expressing a message. And each one of those has this level descriptor that shows you what behaviors, what skills in language do they show in order for us to describe them as intermediate or beginner. Now, that means that you can have a student that is advanced at listening, intermediate at speaking, beginner at reading, and beginner at writing. They're not going to be all across the board, oh, they're intermediate, they're listening, speaking, it's all. It might be that they're all there, but it might not, that they're at different, because those things fluctuate, especially with the reading and writing, because that, obviously, even with our native English speakers, if they struggle with reading and writing, so too will somebody learning another language. But there are strategies that science tells us, research-based, which means studies have been done, and over again, those experiments have shown that particular strategies help English language learners be successful in their learning. And that is listed here for us. I'll show you here. So we're going to look at, this is listening. So you have this summary overall with a beginner maximum. The teacher's going to use maximum use of linguistic, that's language supports, which are language supports include visual, showing pictures, putting up a picture of, let's say I don't have a stapler in my classroom, but I want them to know. I'll put a picture on the wall and I'll write the word stapler in Spanish and stapler in English, or whatever language it is that is their first language. Utilizing visuals, utilizing gestures, pointing towards things, door, sharpener, using slower speech. And not so that you can make them feel silly and be like, what you're not gonna talk like that. But you want to, what they mean by slower speech is to give you time to enunciate. Because when you are not a native speaker of a language, and when you are learning a language, you are listening to expert speakers who are native speakers of that language, how they make those speech sounds, those phonemes. What sounds are they making to say electrocute? If I just say electrocute, their ears aren't going to hear it. And the same thing happens for me. Like, I speak Spanish and I can speak it professionally. I can speak it socially, but I am not a native Spanish speaker. So there have been times amongst peers, friends, colleagues who are native Spanish speakers who go into turbo mode where they're all excited and they're talking blah, 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 and then I'm like, oh wait, you guys have to repeat that for me. That shows that repetition, me asking them to repeat. If that was somebody who was assessing, language proficiency, they would say that person is just advanced. I'm not advanced high. I'm not advanced high in Spanish. Advanced high in Spanish means that you are comparable to that native language. So if they're advanced high in English, that means they are on par with their grade level peers who speak English as a first language. Their writing is on par, they're listening and speaking, and they don't have, lots of mistakes. Advanced might still have maybe one or two, but they can speak in academic settings, they can speak in social settings, they've got it. Does everyone sort of understand how this document works? It shows you actual classroom activities you can use in order to help students improve listening skills.
Yes, Mrs. Because I think on 240 tutoring, they divide that into different grade levels. So it makes things harder to understand.
Yes, and it shouldn't be like that. Yeah, definitely utilize this because the same descriptor is true at any age. So that doesn't change. Did you raise your hand, Mr. Pettis?
Yes, but yeah,
okay, you already did it. Okay. So here you have the classroom activities for both beginner and intermediates to help them. Teacher supports you can do. What can you do? With beginners, visuals and your speech, modeling expected behavior, modeling finished products, utilizing your nonverbals, such as gestures or physical movements for added emphasis. And the thing is that we sort of like, if you imagine it from, if we're all Hispanic and Spanish perspective, it seems silly to do make movements, but not everyone has an English language learner whose first language is Spanish. I've had students whose first language is Mandarin, and so I can't, if it's Spanish, I can sort of use their language a little bit and English that's not available if they're speaking Arabic, so I must utilize gestures, visuals, and other things to help them begin to listen to English, to hear the nuance of the language. You would speak slower, shorter sentences, and repeat, Language focuses on providing meaning and vocabulary. So important with beginners that we are teaching vocabulary, not just academic vocabulary, but also social vocabulary too. Social vocabulary. Maybe they don't know what the word tardy means. You might have to define tardy. So vocabulary building, really, really big. Again, with intermediates, pre-teaching and previewing that vocabulary helps all ELLs. In fact, I'll give you a hint. I'll tell you a secret. It helps everyone, period. Because if I have a classroom of 30 kids, I have 6 ELLs and 24 native English speakers, and I'm going to give my lesson and we're going to talk about oxymoron because we're going to read an article about the working poor. And I am going to read the article, not just the content specific vocabulary oxymoron. I'm going to choose other words in the article that I think my students who I know their interests, their weaknesses, their strengths might have an issue with. Maybe the word preposterous is in there. They're not going to know that. So I'm going to define it before. And the reason I define it, not just for my ELLs, for everyone, is so that they have better comprehension during the activity where we're reading the text. So I will always preview concepts, vocabulary, pre-teach those things so that I'm giving them prior knowledge before we read this article where they're going to see words that they might not understand. to put a you know, a napkin over a puddle or a placemat over a puddle so they don't step in it and not know what preposterous means because I just went over it and preposterous means ridiculous. An oxymoron means this, and it's preposterous that we have the working poor in America, right? So pre-teaching vocabulary, not just academic, but any vocabulary that you think your students don't know or that might impede in comprehension. So very important. Allowing for clarification, giving wait time to your students when you're asking them a question where they have to respond back to you, right? Especially with their ELLs. We know that research says wait time gives you better responses from all students, but especially our English learners, because when you ask them a question about something, and it doesn't have to be academic, it could be just going over, you know, how was your day, giving them extra time to respond allows them to translate, process, gather what they want to say, translate it back and give it to you. But if you know, give them the answer or help them with the answer or move on to someone else without extending that wait time, you minimize their chance of giving you a response and practicing that language. So you always want to extend wait time, and that's, you know, allowing for clarification, allowing for, you know, thinking. You have your speaking. You want to teacher support so you can model annotation and correct pronunciation of newly learned vocabulary. And a lot of times when we have like a word that's, you know, difficult to pronounce or something that's new, like maybe we're going to say preposterous and people read it wrong and say, okay guys, this word is preposterous, everybody say preposterous, and then the whole class says preposterous. But if I hear someone say it wrong, I say, okay, let's say it again. What was that word? Preposterous. Practice having them. And in a classroom that, let's say I have 30 kids and 6 of them are ELLs, by having everyone say the word together in sort of a chorale, like a chorus, it takes away the stress of having to say the word by myself. If the teachers are saying it with everyone, even if I didn't get it right on the first time, I can join in the second time. Okay, I got it this time. Preposterous. And you can't even hear that I said it a little bit off because everyone else is saying it. You want them to practice in saying the words. And the absolute best way to help our ELLs is to give them practice talking. Give them activities that would have them talking to their peers, give them activities that would have them talking to you, give them activities where, you know, they go interview another teacher and ask questions, where you have them practicing speech all the time. And not just about academic, where you might ask them, you know, hey, oh no, are you hungry? No. Hold on one second, guys. 1 second, maybe. Sorry, guys. So for speaking, you want to give them every opportunity to practice, right? To participate in academic discussions. And so if you have a class with 30 kids, 6 of them are ELLs, I'm going to make sure that I'm carefully crafting my small learning groups, my cooperative learning groups, to make sure that each of my ELLs is going to be supported in their cooperative learning groups. If they're going to be in a learning group where they're able to, you know, participate. If I have beginners, I'm going to make sure that I have a native, you know, someone who also speaks their language in there as like a buddy system. And you want them to practice utilizing that academic vocabulary. So if I gave a lesson and I asked a question to everyone, I might say, okay, guys, think about that question, and then turn to your partner and think, pair, share. and then they turn to their partner and they practice speaking about that content specific vocabulary. Okay, so they talk with their peer says, and their peer says, oh, that's a good idea, I thought this, blah, blah, blah. And then we come back, and then I say, okay guys, so now that you talk to your peers, let's have some people share what they thought. And now I went from giving them an opportunity to speak in small group to large group, and you can ask for volunteers. Students will be more willing to participate in those larger group discussions if you've already practiced, in the smaller ones with the think, pair, share, find somebody who. So the important thing about our ELLs with speaking is that you have to create a classroom environment where they're going to be able to practice their language skills without being laughed at if they mispronounce. And that's going to happen because your tongue learns to behave in a certain way, and every language makes different speech sounds, which your tongue has to learn to move that way. How do you say this? How is this pronounced? And it takes a while for that muscle memory, that tongue memory to take place. And so as you are learning a new language, you might, pronounce things or have an accent in a way that's different. My grandma used to say share every time she said share. Every time she said share. If she were in a classroom and is a intermediate English learner and she says, my share is broken, and the whole class laughs, what will that do to her desire to practice, her willingness to speak in that classroom? Somebody tell me, what's going to happen?
It makes me want to stop talking.
Right. I don't want to say anything if everybody's going to be laughing at the way that I say things. No.
That happens to me now.
You see it?
Yeah.
I say share, chicken, choice.
There you go.
I talk like that, and the kids are like, what? I'm like, you need to check your papers, redo it, check the answer. They're like, what, miss? And I'm just looking at them like, okay, put on your big girl panties and just don't, because they do that now.
Right.
And they're like,
and if they do it with adults, me because you can bet your bottom dollar they'll do it with kids. You know what I mean?
Look, you see my race, they're like, Miss, you talk like my Thea. And I'm like, I'm from Corpus. It is what it is. I don't know.
That's funny. So
and then I'm the total opposite. So when I talk, like a lot of my, like one of the instructional coaches be like, do you know Spanish? Well, I know enough, but not enough. Like I understand it. The reason I don't have like a little accent, so I'm from West Dakota, I'm from the Valley, but I don't have an accent because I was never taught Spanish. I'm like, well, I don't have that kind of Mexican twang, like the Mexican speech. So I wasn't taught it because my grandparents were bilingual.
Right.
And my parents spoke English. So I didn't really have to communicate in Spanish at all. So everybody's like, oh my gosh, you enunciate so good. I'm like, yeah, because I was never taught another language. Like I was only taught English.
Well, you're lucky. We need to trade places. Even my husband would do that. I'm like, babe, we're gonna have some chicken for dinner today. He'd be like, what? I'm like, we're gonna cook chicken, macaroni and cheese. He's like, what do they serve that is? What is it? But I guess we'll eat it. And I'm looking at him like, seriously? And he's like, what? I'm like, I don't know. I grew up right here in Corpus. I don't know what happened, but I have that speech impediment to where it's make me not want to read out loud or anything.
Right.
Well, and so then I get nervous reading sometimes too. It's okay. I'm like, I look at the word, be like, and the kids are like, Miss, it's this word. I'm like, you're right. Sorry.
Yeah.
And all you have to say is, hey, teachers don't know everything. There's lots of words. And then I'll tell them there's lots of words I come into contact with. I'm like, that is a new word for me. Let me sound this out. Like, what is that word? So we don't know everything and we make mistakes. And it's important for our students to see we can make mistakes. But when we have ELLs, creating that classroom climate where everybody respects each other, where everyone is valuable. And like, I've had so many times students, make fun of somebody because they have an accent. And I tell literally everyone in my classes that when I encounter someone who has an accent when they're speaking English, immediately I know that they use more of their brain than more people. People who have an accent means that they know a second language, and thereby, statistically speaking, are smarter than other people who speak just one. We have more neural pathways, more things need to be connected in order for all of that to work. So it is literally no laughing matter that this person has an accent. It's actually kind of cool because I only know they speak 2 different languages, and that's a cool thing. I have experienced that sort of like negative, you don't have an accent or you're not saying things correctly, like you, Ceci, I don't know if they call you that, but from Spanish, because I'm also, you know, I speak English as my first language. I do speak Spanish, and I really love Spanish. Like, Spanish music is my favorite. I think it's like more beautiful. But many times when not many times, but sometimes people will be jerks and like make fun of the way that I pronounce things, if I missay something, or maybe I have the like, you know, the feminine or the masculine wrong. And to have like Spanish speakers sort of make fun of me because I got it incorrectly. And I'm like, I don't really care, but I always think a little bit, it makes me like, well, I'm trying, you know, that's kind of, imagine as a child, and then it's a daunting task to come to a new country, you know, probably you didn't even want to be there. It's a new experience, new culture, new people, no friends, probably not a lot of family, you know, from what you had before. And then to be in a place where people are making fun of you, it's not going to work, and you'll have people shut down. So very important. And which is why it's, you know, the classroom climate and the you know, the way in which you run your class is an entire standard and an entire domain, because it is important. It will make or break with whether or not these strategies work, because you could do amazing strategies for students. Miss Alceda utilizes all the strategies: pre-teach, pre-teach vocabulary, think, pair, share, and, you know, find somebody who, many opportunities to talk, but the students are still not participating because they get laughed at. Well, it doesn't matter what kind of amazing research-based strategy you're doing. If children are being laughed at or they feel uncomfortable practicing, I don't care what strategies you're trying to make them do, it's not going to happen, and it's not going to be effective if that environment is not conducive for them to practice and make mistakes, which is totally fine, you know, in that language. Okay, guys, I'm gonna have to let you go because my 7-year-old is not feeling well, and actually it's past time, but we will see each other again on Wednesday and Thursday, same time, same place.
All right, sorry for being late, guys, but I'm gonna still do the PPR. I'm gonna wait till Wednesday to do it.
Sure, sounds good.
All right, see you guys later. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Y'all have a beautiful rest of your evening.
You do the same.